Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Uhler. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of What's Your Deal podcast. Today I'm joined with Dr. Mark Costes from his podcasting studio, tuning in virtually. Mark is somebody who started out as a sole practitioner dentist and was able to accumulate a total of 16 practices before he exited those practices. He's also the founder of the Dental Success Institute and the Dental Success Network, which is an accumulation of 1,800 dentists who are regaining their passion for their industry and learning all of the valuable tools for them to be successful in their practice and also in their life. During this episode, you'll find that Mark shares all kinds of gems about his journey and the path that helped him to achieve what he believes is a level of success that is satisfying and fulfilling for him personally and his family. I think you'll enjoy this episode as Mark shares some of the gems that took him from being a sole practitioner to a successful business coach, consultant, and leader of a community of the people in his industry. So I'm here with Mark Costes today, Dr. Mark Costes, and it's such a pleasure to be here with him. Mark is actually one of the people that helped me to develop AMPed and to move further into the education and training company that you're now watching. And so it's a true honor to have you with us today, Mark. And your background is fascinating because, and I'd like you to share it, but from what I understand, you started as a dentist. And you had aspirations for a whole lot more. And so can you take a minute and just share with my audience where you started and what you're up to now?
Yeah, Matt, thank you so much for having me. It's my honor to be here. It's interesting to me when I reflect. We both live in this tiny little town of Prescott, Arizona. I was in 92 cities last year. I traveled 180,000 miles. But whenever I come back to Prescott, Arizona, I could take a sigh of relief no matter how crazy my life is. This is kind of my reprieve. But what I was reflecting on the other day is how many cool people I've run across in this tiny little town, high level people. You and I share an audio video producer who's Steve Hollingsworth from Enlightened Media. I met those guys right here in Prescott. The president of my company, Kay Lang, who's, an incredible executive. I met her here in our tiny little town. So many great connections here, considering how small it is and how far away from what feels like the craziness of a big city where a lot of times people think that all the great resources and all the great talent is. I've been able to find great talent and great friendships, including you, in this tiny little town. So our kids went to private school together, a tiny little school called Primavera. That's how you and I met in the first place. And it's been fun to watch you kind of develop and build your business over the years. This is a great next chapter for you in AMPed. And I'm super stoked for your next chapter and to watch how it develops and evolves.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's funny you talk about our town and everything you said is so true. It's a truly amazing place to come home to. And thinking back, our kids in private school, that was a long time ago.
It was. And kids graduate and we have one left at 16, 2 more years till empty nest. But I have 2 that are off of college now, and it's a trip, man, to kind of look back. Myself, I feel like I'm 25 still, and the only real marker in time for me, because I like to keep myself in good shape, but the only marker in time for me is to watch my kids get bigger and turn into like real men and be off and doing their own thing and supporting themselves. And so, yeah, it's whenever I get a chance to connect with people that I met through my kids at a young age, it's always a trip just to reflect and look back and go, man, remember when they were little humans? Now they're like full grown humans, bigger than us. It's crazy.
It truly is. And that brings me back to the question I asked, because I know we used to talk. We were out to dinner one night and you were talking about some of the traveling you were doing and some of the coaching with dental practices. And at that time, it was a new thing for you. You were just getting started. And it's pretty amazing to see where you've come.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So I'll share a little bit of my story if you feel that it's valuable to you and to the audience here. I graduated from Marquette University School of Dentistry 2002. So I was a practicing dentist for 21 years, clinical practicing dentist for 21 years. Started in Phoenix, and then I couldn't handle the heat, and it only lasted about 11 months in Phoenix. And we knew that we wanted to stay close to my parents and here in Arizona. So we found this tiny little dental practice for sale in Prescott Valley, Arizona. This is a funny story, actually. We're living in Chandler, Arizona, found this practice online, actually purchased the practice before I even came to Prescott. So my very first day of ever coming to Prescott was Leslie and I, my wife, and I had driven up here Sunday. I was going to start working in this practice that I had already purchased on Monday, and we checked into like a Crazy 8 hotel or something really, really low budget. We went over there. I looked in the window because I didn't have the keys yet. I was like, "All right, here's the new practice, honey," and that's when it all started. And the reason that we selected this area wasn't just because it was close to my parents who were living in Phoenix at the time, but I knew that I wanted to have kind of a multiple practice model. And the demographics were fantastic in Central Arizona back then. They're still pretty good, but back then it was wide open for multiple practice ownership. So within a few years, I had 6 dental practices. I had one here in Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Flagstaff, Williams, and then one in Phoenix as well. So I built six dental practices, with the first one being that little practice in Prescott Valley. And there reached a time when I didn't have kind of a great business mind yet. And I was learning kind of off the cuff. I was making lots of mistakes. The practices were all growing. And then I started losing key players. So at the time I was like, man, I'm just going to keep on doing this over and over and over again. It seems pretty straightforward. You know, you find a good team, you find a good associate dentist, you put them in there, you leave them alone, and you go find the next one. What happened was I started losing key personnel. I'd lose an office manager, and then that office would struggle. I'd lose a key doctor in one of those practices, and the practice would struggle. And I realized, man, I'm not a good entrepreneur. I just got lucky. I had good office managers that came with the practices that I was purchasing. I had good associate dentists that either came with the practice, or I was lucky enough to recruit them and stick them in there. But when key people started leaving, I started realizing that I was not systemized. I did not have a good infrastructure. I did not have an acceptable organizational chart. My personal life was spinning out of control because I was spending 80 hours a week running these dental practices. I had no balance. I was not healthy. Drinking too much to fall asleep, eating fast food on the road. And I just decided at that point, it was about 7 years into this whole journey, that I was going to sell 4 of my 6 dental practices, keep 2, and then build a solid infrastructure around them, get myself healthy again, get rebalanced, and start this thing over. So after that, we started rebuilding with these 2. They were super strong practices. And then we ended up getting another 10 practices after that. So we had 16 total dental practices. And I always like to say that, like, some of the best lessons come from your failures, your setbacks, and bad decisions. And I made plenty in that first 7-year period of time. So that's why I felt like I was qualified to start building again after reflection and building it the right way. And that's when I actually started coaching and kind of helping people navigate around some of the mistakes that I made.
So that's a powerful story. So let me ask you, did you acquire all of the practices that you owned at one point?
Yeah. Or
did you start any?
After the 16 dental practices, if you're looking back, 6 of them were startups, de novos.
Okay.
And then 10 of them were acquisitions.
Interesting. So you've seen a lot in that world.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I still believe it's a relatively small sample size. I mean, if you look at the number of transactions that you've done over the years, I mean, dozens, if not hundreds of transactions that you've done. I've been very, very blessed in that the consulting company just exploded after we started the podcast 10 years ago. Started, hosting live events. We had a private coaching group that led into a larger network. And so I'm coaching and consulting with small groups, individual practices. So I've been able to kind of pull the curtain back and look behind the scenes of every different type of dental practice that you can possibly imagine, from a practice that's struggling to get to its first million to practices that are collectively doing $25 to $35 million in gross revenue. So I've seen it. I've seen it all. But in that time, I've learned just so much about just general business, leadership, systemization, culture, all of those things. Those are the sorts of things that I love to speak about. The podcast started 10 years ago, Matt, and that was June of 2015. There was about 180,000 podcasts at the time. Now there's over 6 million podcasts. I don't know if you knew that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And there was 5 dental podcasts at the time, 10 years ago. And now there's several hundred. But I had first mover advantage. So I was like, I kind of rooted my heels in. I've done 5 podcasts a week, every single week without fail for the last 10 years. So we have 2,300 episodes in the can. And we just put them out every single day. And that has really, really served. That's been the greatest. The podcasting situation has been the greatest gift. We're the number one dental podcast in the world. We're in 151 countries. We get between 8,000 and 10,000 unique listeners every single episode. 120,000 downloads per month. It's just been really, really amazing and a great excuse to reach out to all of my heroes in my profession, but also professional athletes and Olympians and UFC fighters, Navy SEALs, astronauts. It's crazy the number of people that I've been able to get on the podcast just because, we have good listenership. So it's been a really, really cool journey.
It sounds like it. And part of what I appreciate about that is that because of the people that you're able to serve, then you're able to gain so much knowledge from all of them and then share it. And 5 podcasts a week is an extraordinary amount of effort and information that you're able to put out into the world and recycle and recirculate. And I also appreciate some of the people that you share in different industries. It's amazing to me how the different industries have so much in common. Yeah. And that some of the gems that you can gain from one industry or somebody who's extraordinary in their world and apply it to your own or your own industry, there's so much that's universal that I enjoy learning about as I talk with people in different worlds.
Oh, it's so true. Matt, listen, I listen to your podcast and I'm like, oh my gosh, every single thing he's talking about is applicable to dentistry. And then if you peel back and said, okay, this is whatever service-based industry, all of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, you could apply to any other industry. You could apply it to pest control. You can apply it to, a contracting company, an electrician, a plumber. Any type of service industry is similar. There's still the same levels of kind of overhead that you have to consider. Payroll is typically the highest thing, with the exception of how much you're getting taxed, et cetera. There's so many similarities amongst the different types of businesses. My first business ever, while I was waiting, I have a long story about this, but it took me 3 years, 3 years and 21 tries to get into dental school. I got 20 rejections and I got in on the 21st try after 3 years. And as I was trying to get in, because I was a collegiate athlete, so my GPA was average at best. And I have a little bit of a touch of dyslexia. All of my sons have the same thing. So we read a little bit slower than most people, but once we get it, we get it. So it's not a matter of an intelligence. It's a speed at which we acquire that knowledge and that, that we can absorb the information. But anyway, it took me a good period of time to get into dental school. So during that period of time, I bought my first business, which was a catering truck. We sold tacos and cheeseburgers out of the back of a truck. And I was getting my executive MBA at the same time I got into business school. So that 3-year period of time was extremely valuable period of time as far as developing my entrepreneurial chops and learning kind of the basics of business. And when I got out, I felt like I was equipped to build this empire of dental practices. Turns out, like, you learn a lot more in the field, in your specific field, than you do learning about it in an MBA or any other way.
Well, it's such a powerful story because it's so easy, especially these days with social media, I think, for people to look at somebody and just think, man, they just had it easy, or they're gifted in some way. And your story just says tenacity and hard work and effort and confidence and struggle that's a whole lot of applications to try to get into dental school to get what you wanted.
Yeah.
And now you're in a position that you're teaching it to the masses at a higher level than anybody I know. I mean, it's really amazing story.
Oh, well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. And I love opening up. One of my favorite slides is just this picture of, Eminem. Have you ever seen 8 Mile?
I have not.
Okay. One of my favorite ways to start, especially when I'm speaking at dental schools or medical schools or law schools or a law conference or talking to any large group of people. I'm set to go speak to 1,200 people, sales reps next week. And my favorite way to start off is like I showed just this picture of Eminem, like full face picture of Eminem. Anybody seen 8 Mile? Everybody raises their hand. Like, do you remember that one scene when there was a rap battle at the end and Eminem gets up there and he's just used to getting just slayed by these other rappers? They would talk about like his mom. He grew up in a single wide trailer. His mom was, an alcoholic. His girlfriend slept with this other rapper. So they just rap and they just slay him. And then he'd get up there and try to defend himself. He gets to the final rap battle of Detroit, 8 Mile, this whole area. And, everybody's up there just kind of, waiting for him to just fail. They flip a coin and he gets to go. He gets to go first, and he just sits up there and he's like, he works into his rap all the things that he knew they were going to say about him. Like, yeah, my mom's an alcoholic. Yeah, my girlfriend slept with that dude. Yeah, I'm white trash. All the things that he knew they were going to talk about in their rap. He starts off with saying, here's all the things I've done wrong. Here's all the mistakes I've made. Here's all the things you're going to make fun of me about. He just owns everything. And then the next guy goes and he's like, you just took my whole show, and drops the mic, and Eminem wins, and all is good in the rap battle world. But one of my favorite things to do is just to like put up that picture of Eminem, tell that story, and say, it took me 21 tries to get into dental school, guys. You guys are all smarter than me. Like I basically failed in every different way you can in leadership, in partnerships, in financial everything. So you start off that way. And you just open up and say, but I have something to teach you. I have to teach you. I can teach you the way not to do it. And that's extremely powerful. And we call it collapsing time. If you can collapse time and help people navigate around the mistakes that you've made, you can save them years of heartache and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of mistakes that they don't have to make if they have a mentor that can show them how to navigate around those pitfalls.
It's so powerful and it's so true. And I certainly aspire to be one who's prepared to listen more than I talk, because those gems, again, if I can learn from somebody else's experience, it can shave years and lots of struggle off of my life. So yeah, I'll need to watch that movie for sure.
It's a good one. It's a good one. It's aged pretty well. There's there's some stuff going on in the pop culture right now. He did not get sucked up into all that negativity that's happening right now on trial. So it's aged pretty well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'd love if you would share at some point, but you shared something towards the beginning where you were saying your personal life was struggling. You're drinking more than you would like, eating fast food. One of the questions I tend to ask people that are on my podcast is balance. And, entrepreneurship can be all consuming, and balance is tough to achieve. Rhythm is certainly an objective of mine, but I don't know that I've ever found balance, but I certainly have been, I think, where you described, where, man, I was chasing shiny objects and there was never enough. And I just wanted the next mountain to climb and conquer. And man, things fell apart. And your ability to bring that back into balance or rhythm and travel like you do and achieve the things that you want to achieve in a way that sounds like it has harmony, man, there's something there. And that's a journey through life that a lot of people never get to the other side of successfully. So if we have time, I'd love to hear more about that journey for you, because it's such an important one for so many successful people.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for asking that question. It was around that same time when I had what I would call kind of an epiphany moment, trajectory moment, but also some people might look at it negatively and say I had basically a nervous breakdown, which is what it felt like at the time. I had these six dental practices. I had accomplished this arbitrary financial goal that I had set 10 years earlier. When I was a 15-year-old kid, I said, I just want to be a millionaire. And the pinnacle of success for me would be $1 million in the bank and netting $1 million as income every single year. If I can achieve that some way, somehow, this is before I even knew I was going to be a dentist. If I could achieve that some way, somehow, I will reach the pinnacle of success and I will be successful. And it's interesting that, around the time when I hit that goal, I actually remember the day my CPA sent me my tax return and said, hey, Mark, your tax return's in your inbox. It's due. You got to sign this, e-sign this before midnight. It's due by midnight. Just review it for accuracy and then sign it for me. And then we'll send it off to the IRS. I remember opening up my laptop and I looked at the top line. The first time ever in my life, I was like, $1,038,000 was the top line of my net income that year. Mm-hmm. And I remember shutting the laptop and I was like, okay, I have $1 million in the bank. It was, in investment accounts and in investments. So, but basically $1 million of liquidity. So that was the first check mark. The second check mark was netting $1 million. I got there 3 years late. So I gave myself 20 years to accomplish it. I said, I was 15. I said I wanted to accomplish it when I was 35. By the time I was 35, I was actually 38 when I accomplished it. But I remember shutting the laptop thinking, all right, I have these 6 dental practices. I finally hit this financial goal. That was the only measure of success that I had ever set out for myself ever. And I thought, if this is what success feels like, I've never been more miserable in my life. Something is absolutely wrong. So it was around that time I sold the 4 dental practices and I developed this matrix called the 4 futures. And the 4 futures, if you were to draw an X, the top quadrant is mind, second is meaning, third is muscle, and then the fourth is money, right? So mindfulness would be something like, what's my internal dialogue feel like? What's my ability to handle stress? Like, on an everyday basis, what's my mood feel like from moment to moment? Am I constantly scared or angry? Am I positive and happy and fulfilled? That's the mindfulness quadrant, right? So we have kind of an assessment that over the years we've developed where you can actually kind of turn the subjective portion of your brain, like this is a very subjective feeling type thing, but we have an assessment where you can turn that subjective into an objective measure where you can kind of track your trend from high to low. Like right now, this quarter, I'm feeling like a 3 in this quadrant out of 10. Another quarter, I'm feeling more like a 7. And then you can kind of dissect what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How am I speaking to myself internally? Like what habits have I adopted in order to increase this quadrant. And then the meaning quadrant, I like to think of that as kind of your legacy quadrant, your personal relationships, your professional relationships. How would you rate those? Like how well are you getting along with in your primary relationship? How well are you getting along with your kids, with your key team members, with your extended family, with your best friends? Like how would you rate the meaning quadrant in your life right now? Do you feel like you have a purpose overall? Do you feel like you're making a dent in the universe? Do you feel like you're here for a reason? That's the meaning quadrant. So you got 2 quadrants so far. Muscle quadrant is easy. How vibrant do I feel? Am I carrying any extra weight? Am I getting good sleep? What kind of fuel am I putting into my body? Am I abusing any substances? Am I getting exercise every single day? Am I moving? Can I play with my kids? That's the muscle quadrant. And then finally the money quadrant. Our personal relationship with money, like how much do we have set aside? Do we have investment accounts? Is our personal take-home income commensurate with what we feel our value is? All of that stuff. At the time, if I was to grade myself all the way around, I would have given myself like a 1 or a 2 in each of those quadrants, but a 10 out of 10 in the financial quadrant. Now, I think that a lot of us fall into the trap that like we have one way of being able to to gauge our success at the time, right? Maybe it's like I just lost 40 pounds, so I'm feeling really good in the muscle quadrant, but my personal relationships are falling apart and I have no money in the bank, right? So that's not successful. And if I have all the money in the world, but the rest of the 3 quadrants, like I was at the time, were falling apart, then you're not successful, right? So we developed this so you have kind of an objective way to track, like, how's my mindfulness? How's my meaning? How's my personal health, and then how's my financial health? So that's kind of the matrix that we use in order to, with my whole coaching group and myself personally, to kind of gauge where we're at. We always ask, what's your 4 future score? How are you doing? Before we even start with, well, let's look at your P&L and let's dig into the profitability and the EBITDA of your operation right now. First, what's your 4 future score? How are you doing?
Well, that's excellent. And some of the words you used, track and score, I find myself, I use this term for myself where it's like I'm on the treadmill. And when I feel myself on that treadmill, I know those quadrants are off. And again, I've got different quadrants because I wasn't aware of yours, but I know when I'm off and I'm just feeling like a machine and I'm not getting the juice out of life. I'm not enjoying the moments. I'm not enjoying the highs and contemplating during the lows and all of those things. I'm just too focused and something sacrifices. And for me, that's when I've got to bring it back to why, what am I up to? What's it about? And again, a number on a tax return is part of what motivated me in the past as well. And similar to what you shared, once I hit that number, it's like, man, the why? And it did not. Maybe part of it's age, for me, I'm reaching a point where, how much is enough and what am I doing and why am I doing it and what fills my cup and what gives me the most juice in life.
Yeah.
And work is certainly a huge part of that. And achieving objectives are a huge part of that. But I've certainly been so focused on objectives in the past that other things that I realized were super important to me got sacrificed and compromised and sometimes beyond a point where I can go back and fix them. And I don't want to be there again.
Yeah. And your ability to self-reflect like that is not something, that is a trait that a lot of people don't have. The ability to just take a pause, step back, and be able to look at yourself objectively, as if you're a third party kind of looking at your own life. Sometimes we're so close to it, it's difficult to analyze ourselves and we can't see the answer, which is right in front of our face, which is why I think that coaching is so important sometimes. Not necessarily therapy or anything like that, but just a coach that says, all right, from where I'm sitting, this is really, really obvious. The answer is right in front of your face and you're walking around it. It's like, it's right there. Do you see it now? I think that's really, really important. And I do completely agree with you that overachievers have the blessing and the curse of not having an off button. And sometimes you just have to step back and say, well, why am I doing this? Do I even have enough days of my life to spend the money that I'm accumulating right now? It's like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for my family? What really is the true kind of core reason that I'm doing this? And a lot of times, we forget that there's phases in life, right? I talk about this a lot, but there's phases and there's seasons in life. Like when we're young and when we're on the come up in our late teens to say our early 30s, those are the grind years, right? I mean, we need to establish ourselves. We need to establish our reputation. We have to get, we have to build up our skill set, whatever that's going to be. We have to build as much wisdom as possible. But the number one ally and the number one resource we have at that time is grind, not money, nothing else, just the ability to work longer and harder than most people. Take the seed of an idea and just work at it as hard as you possibly can. What happens is, like, a lot of overachievers then equate that grind and that ridiculous schedule to success, when there was a reason that you worked through that season as hard as you did, because you were trying to establish yourself and you needed to create some momentum that's going to go into the next season of your life where you're more established and you can utilize that wisdom and that capital to deploy to take your foot off the gas a little bit and be in charge of, several different areas of your life. And you can graduate out of that grind phase. What people don't realize is that sometimes they get into their 4th or 5th decade, and for no other reason, because they've just equated grind with success. that they never take their foot off the gas and they never are able to enjoy the fruits of their labor or even take a second to look around and say, oh shit, I'm already there. Like I've already accomplished and I'm way beyond what I ever thought I would be when I set out on this journey in my early 20s. I've already surpassed that. Why am I still in grind mode? Like you don't have to be. You don't have to be. It's about recognition.
Well, and they keep moving the marker.
Yes.
Right.
Have you ever read The Gap in the Game?
That's what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs. They keep moving the marker.
Yes.
And they never quite get there because they get close enough. And then they decide, you know what, I can do more. I'm capable of more. I got more horsepower. And they never reach it. It reminds me of a story. In my career of 27 years, I've helped people buy, sell, and finance businesses. And I had a gentleman and his wife come into my conference room to meet with me about selling their businesses because he was terminally ill. And when I say terminally ill, I mean, he was physically, I could tell that he was on the off ramp. I mean, he was in real rough shape. And we got maybe 20 minutes into the conversation about how I might be able to help them sell the business before he turned it around to what do I have to buy? And he's literally asking me to bring him files of businesses that he can buy. And his wife is sitting there just quietly listening. But even this gentleman couldn't acknowledge or didn't want to see or just was so grinding, to use the term that you shared, that literally on the last few days of his life, he's trying to figure out what he can do more of, as opposed to, and I've never been there, but I'm going to say as opposed to settling into his life and acknowledging the people around him. He was looking for the next mountain to climb. And man, it was sad, honestly.
Yeah.
And it was sad to see his wife sit there quietly listening to him do what he had done his whole life. Yeah. And that's how he was going to finish his time, just like that.
Yeah. It's a tragic story that we hear far too often. You know, you mentioned something, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned something that is very, very common amongst high achievers that I've seen, and that is constantly moving that goalpost. I think a great book to read by Dan Sullivan is The Gap in the Game. And it talks about that, how we as overachievers, type A's, have a tendency to get close to a goal, and you're already, I mean, all you have to do literally is put in another little bit of effort and you're going to cross that goal. You can raise your hand in victory and then maybe go about setting a new goal. But what we do as overachievers is you start to approach this goal and say, oh, I'm going to easily make this. I'm going to set this out another 100 yards. And then as you start to approach that, you reset the goal line again and again and again, and you never take the time to celebrate or even acknowledge that you're making progress. So the contention or the theme of this book is, instead of measuring how far you are from this arbitrary goal that you keep on resetting, which is what he would call the gap, instead, what you should do is look at where you are, take a true assessment of where you are, and then look back to where you started so that you can always see how far you've gained since you started your journey, instead of how far away you are from this goalpost that you keep on resetting. Great book. But I mean, yeah.
You know, it sounds great. And I love that concept. And I'd be curious, especially with how many people you've been exposed to and work with, why do you think people move the goalpost? And I guess what I'm getting at is that, honestly, it feels to me like there's almost the fear of achieving it, because then what?
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you think about that. What's that about?
Yeah, I think there's two things happening. I think exactly what you said is extremely accurate. It's like, well, you have this crisis of kind of self-worth. It's like, well, once I get this, then what am I all about after this? I'm going to be a vacant human, not having something to strive for, right? So there's a little bit of fear and a little bit of, I guess you could call it lack of overall kind of vision of the big picture. A little bit of scarcity potentially, that if I did this and I let go of this goal, I'm going to have to start over and I don't know if I'm going to be able to accomplish it. I think that's one thing, but I think another thing is that a lot of times we set a goal that's too small. We don't give ourselves enough credit in the beginning. And as you start to approach something, you're like, holy cow, that was not easy, but I've accomplished this. I'm just going to keep on charging down this one road until I physically can't take another step, because clearly this is the right path. I think that there is a compromise in both ways. I think that, if you do things the right way, and I'm sure you see this all the time, Matt, the best businesses that come to you that are all buttoned up and are going to get a great multiple, and the valuation is beyond what they ever dreamed. Those are practices or businesses where they remove themselves from the business as the choke point, as the bottleneck. They've put a really effective executive team in place. They've learned how to delegate, not abdicate, and they have the people surrounding them helping to build the business with them. So they're not beholden to it. They're not the only person holding this entire enterprise on their shoulders every single day. Those are the people that actually have the best exits, have the best quality of life, and they didn't have to grind for 30 years, right? They graduated into this next phase. And honestly, I think that the people that keep on grinding are not people that are not willing to work hard. They're unwilling to do some of the things that sometimes are harder than the grind. And that's like pulling back, getting creative, doing the mental work and not necessarily just the physical work, the stuff that we're comfortable with. Like from a dentist perspective, I always say that you can't produce your way out of broken infrastructure, right? Which means that as clinicians, as surgeons of the oral cavity, like what we want to do to fix a problem is to do more of what we're comfortable doing. That's more clinical dentistry, right? But if you have holes in your bucket and you keep on pouring water into a holy bucket, you're just gonna have more of the stuff spill out onto the floor. It's like, no, wait, first, before you start trying to fix this problem with the one tool in your toolbox, which is clinical dentistry or more surgeries, stop for a second. Let's look at your infrastructure. Let's fix the infrastructure. Let's put the right people in the right seats. And then you can actually take your foot off the gas as far as the clinical stuff. You can put the right people in the right places, and you could take a breath and watch your business grow without your constant attention and without your constant, clinician/technician hat on.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so true. And I also think that's part of what's so great about what you do is that you help people figure out how to get there. I would say that 90% of the people who come to me to help them sell their business is typically because they're the single point of failure, which is a little different term than what you used, but the same principle where they are one way or the other, they are influencing the results of that business every single day. And that's a whole lot less attractive to a buyer who's willing to pay a premium, and justifiably so, because the business is set up well where there's not that single point of failure. And very powerful and unique.
Yeah. Listen, Matt, I would love to ask you a couple questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
Because you've seen so many of these transactions and some really, really triumphant kind of stories and some really sad stories when people reach the end of their career and they're like, you have to give the bad news to them potentially that there's not much to sell, or this is worth a lot less than you might have imagined. Like, is that the primary thing, is that they never graduate beyond the primary technician role? Or what are some other mistakes that people make over the course of building their business prior to deciding to sell that they've made?
Yeah, there's a couple that come to mind. One is the one we just talked about. They're the single point of failure. It can't run without them. And the harder they make it for somebody to step into their shoes, the harder it is to sell. Typically, the lower the multiple, it goes down from there. The longer it takes. The other piece, which isn't super sexy, but it's true, is the financial aspect. And so many people, and in your industry, this is amplified, but so many people are so focused on trying to save 30 to 40 cents in taxes, and they're hiding all this money in every way they possibly can. And my accountant said it would be okay, and whatever they're doing to try to save money in taxes, but they're missing the multiple. And, for a lot of the businesses I sell, that's $2, $3, $4, $5 per dollar. And I know for some of the transactions you've participated in, it's 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11. And that's not 30 or 40 cents.
No.
It is. So there becomes a point, and I believe that most people, if not all, should run their business as if they may need to or choose to sell it sometime in the near future, because you can't do it quick. I mean, it's typically a 2, 3, 4 year process. And so I think running your business as if it's going to be sold or prepared to be sold at any point is a healthy way to run the business. And it also makes it a whole lot more valuable asset as you're just doing your day-to-day, or a business owner's doing their day-to-day, operating it effectively from a financial accountability standpoint. So those are probably the two largest mistakes I see people make that disappoint them when they come to me and I give them the reality of what the story is.
Yeah. What types of businesses, like service-based, / product-based, like what are the businesses that typically get the highest valuation that you've seen if they're run very well?
Well, certainly dental would be one, veterinary. I mean, a lot of these medically oriented personal service businesses bring a high multiple, and in some cases higher than even fits my typical model, of a Main Street business. And there's lots of reasons, which I know you talk about on your podcast for that. But aside from those businesses, the ones that typically carry the highest multiple are the ones that are in attractive industries, manufacturing, wholesale distribution, those kinds of businesses. Service businesses are so tied to labor that they can be tough to generate a high multiple with.
Yeah.
But the other thing that moves the mark is, when you get above 7 figures or more in EBITDA, then it opens up a whole new world of potential buyers, private equity groups and those sorts that are willing to pay a higher premium, and they are hungry. There is a huge market for those businesses, but they've got to cross that threshold. And if they're under that, then typically they're falling into the Main Street business model, and they're using discretionary earnings as opposed to EBITDA, and the multiples are much lower.
Got it. Yeah. It's interesting because I have been in lots of private equity boardrooms over the last couple of years. We're doing a roll up ourselves. We're set to close this summer. And the multiples are much lower than they were a couple of years for my particular profession, but still much better than they are for other professions. So we're going to do great. But the whole consolidation wave and this white hot money that rolls in from private equity it's an interesting kind of world that I found myself in. I knew nothing about private equity prior to maybe 2.5 years ago. And I found myself sitting at the end of a boardroom with, a bunch of suits with laptops out, and me getting asked questions for 6 to 8 hours, like nonstop. It's a crazy, crazy world. But I now kind of understand how it works, right? So you're gonna roll up some valuable assets. You're gonna a little bit of arbitrage, and then you're gonna work on same store growth. Each individual asset within that roll up needs to increase in value, and then you increase the value of your organization more than it was prior to that. And then you get a bigger fish, and they come at recap. They come and buy you from another private equity company until you get purchased by a big enough company that, one of the top 5 private equity companies, and they either take you public or they hold you like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. They buy businesses to hold forever, good businesses. So it's a very, very interesting world, but the multiples and the money behind this, it's just insane. Like we went to market and our deal size was too small for maybe 50% of the private equity companies that we were exposed to. We still got multiple offers. We got, a couple dozen IOIs, and then probably 10 LOIs, varying significantly. But the size of our deal to me was larger than anything I had ever considered ever in my life. And half of the private equity companies passed because the deal was too small for them. And I was like, my gosh, how big are these deals, man, that are happening out there? Like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. It's crazy.
It is. And there's so much of it out there, but it's got to fit, right? Like you said, I mean, half it didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so fun. It's so fun to play this Monopoly game. Um, what do you see? Like Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs is somebody that I've been following for a really long time, and he's been talking about like, hey, don't go to college, don't get a 4-year degree in something that you can't monetize, and you don't have real skills with it. Like, there's certain degrees. Let's face it, that you have a bachelor's degree, but you didn't really learn anything other than like handing in a couple term papers. They're useless jobs, basically. He's saying instead of doing that, we have, 5 million unfilled blue collar jobs out there, and, blue collar type people that know the trades, like my middle son, Brendan, is going into the trades, are really putting themselves in a great position because there's unlimited work for them. And now it seems as though you get into the right one and you could participate in a roll up or build a larger company, blue collar company as well, and sell to somebody like you or a private equity company. What do you think about those types of trades as far as building those up with good business sense and offloading those at some period?
Well, I think it's great. And the formal education piece is something that I have some views on, but I've never, I started working at honestly 13 years old and never had a formal education, but I did seek education. But for me, it was from people who taught personal development, and I went to the source of what I wanted to know. So I don't have a degree, and personally, I'm not. I wouldn't say I don't encourage my kids to go to school, because if they want to, that's certainly fine. But 2 of my sons, it would not have been good for them. It would have been a waste of money and not ideal. And they've gone down the road of what you're describing. And my 19-year-old son right at the moment is running a small business that he started. Actually, we started as a family, and he's kind of taken it over.
That's awesome.
And it was designed for one of my kids to take over. And he's learning an enormous amount about the real world, because he's having to bid jobs. He's having to find out that he bid them wrong and he lost money. He's having to find out that he would have been making more money working at a fast food joint than he did on that job. He's learning about cost and all of these things that I think will serve him long term. And if he plays his cards right, I do think once he finds a trade, because I believe it will be a trade that he gets into, he'll be able to develop a company and hopefully with my experience and others, turn that into a significant asset. And so for a lot of my clients that are selling Main Street businesses that are in the trades, it literally was what they knew. They did what they knew. They did it better than most. And before they knew it, they had more demand for their service. So they hired more people. And at the end of the day, they made a significant income for an extended period of time because they stuck with it. And then they were able to sell an asset at the end, which allowed them to have a retirement that served their desires in a lot of cases. So I wouldn't call it a lottery ticket, but I would call it a phenomenal exit for people who are focused on providing a certain service for people over time.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just something so satisfying, I think, about being able to visualize something. And we have this to a small degree in healthcare, right? Especially if you get to do restorative work like we do. But to be able to take something, you take something, a vision in your head, you put it on paper, you make some blueprints, you buy the land and you build something from scratch, and then you can walk through it and live in it if you have to at some period of time. To me, I can't think of anything that would be more satisfying than that. There's something so uniquely special about that, I think.
Well, and it's so organic. I've got a client who started out in a service business and then had an opportunity to buy the real estate that was in that business. So instead of paying off somebody else's property, he's paying off his own. He just keeps staying after it. And again, you can accumulate wealth and a nice nest egg and a great quality of life by getting that level of satisfaction you're describing.
Yeah. Well, Matt, you started this off and I'm closing it up, but I do want to, I want to close up with a question to you. And then we can kind of sign off until next time. What's next for you? What's your overall goal with Amped? And where can we look to see you in 3 to 5 years with this new venture?
Well, I appreciate the question. It's a big question. So I've been transactional for 27 years, helping people buy, sell, and finance businesses. And as rewarding as that is, and I still am involved in that, I'm excited about trying to bring more to the table from an education standpoint. One of the things that I'm seeing is with social media, I think there's a nonchalant approach to people buying businesses. And some of what I'm being exposed to is people either having or on the brink of making some of the most significant financial mistakes of their life because they don't know the rules of the game that they're about to dive into because it seems easy online or somebody told them it's easy.
Yeah.
So I'm excited with Amped about bringing business acquisitions and sales of business and finance of business to as many people as I can reach, and the education to help people to do that in a way that does provide what they anticipate and what they're after in life in a way that's safe so that they get the result that they're after. And so through Amped, I'm working on developing the company as I grow organically, but I'm also partnering with Aspire, which is the largest business tour company in the country at the moment. And they bring for me and Amped a platform that's far greater than I might be able to achieve organically.
Okay.
And so this coming weekend, I'm in Orlando and I'll be presenting there on their stage.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Talking about these topics and reaching a much greater audience than I might be able to without that partnership. So they're excited about it and I'm excited about it. And that's what I expect to do more of, is spread the word in this industry that is really untouched in a lot of ways.
That's awesome. So are you hoping to start coaching and consulting people that are looking to buy and sell businesses? Or is this more of a speaking engagement type? How do you envision it rolling out?
Well, I appreciate that. So there's a single point of failure that we talked about earlier that I do not want to be. So
it's true.
Even though I am doing some coaching and consulting at this point, I do see there's only going to be so much time in the day, and I bump up against that every day. And so I'm excited to try to put this out in a way through courses, materials, speaking engagements, community, where I can impact and help more people than I might be one client at a time through a coaching and consulting role. So that's the vision. That's the objective.
Yeah. Try to make the unscalable scalable, right? That is the eternal challenge of all coaches and consultants, and key man risk is another big one. I know that, that single point of failure, I actually like that term. I might have to borrow that from you. That single point of failure, like when you're in an influencer position, is always going to be something that builds your business quickly, but it's also going to stand in the way of scale for one, and a high valuation when you go to unload the business, number two, which you know all too much of.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what I'm up to. And before you close, I would like to share one thing if I can.
Sure. Of course.
So when I'm interviewing people in my podcast, the question I appreciate is asking them, because, it's easy to think somebody got there on their own, but they didn't. Yeah. Usually there's a team. Matter of fact, always, in my opinion.
Always.
And I asked them the question about who is it that helped come alongside them and give them a hand up in what they were after. And some of the answers I get bring tears. And really, to me, that's where the meat is. And I just want to share with you how grateful I am to you that you gave me a hand up in this world. Oh. And as busy as you are and as successful as you are, that you took the time to give of yourself to me to help me get to where I want to go. And I promise you that I will pass that on. I do not take it lightly. I value it, and I will pass it on.
Oh, man. Matt, that means so much coming from you. It really, really does. I've always looked up to you. You're kind of a big deal in our town. I like to fly under the radar in our town because my business is mostly out of town, but I've always kind of admired the way you've conducted yourself and the reputation you've been able to build in our small town, and the success that you've been able to garner here. So that means a lot coming from you. So thank you. Thank you for that sentiment. It means a lot.
You're very welcome. And thank you.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, listen, this is going to be an episode on both of our podcasts. I know my audience is going to get a ton of value from it. Thanks for letting me turn the tables there and ask you a few questions. I can't wait to do a follow-up in 6 months or a year to see where Amped is going. And make sure that you keep up the great social media content, because it's been really, really good. I mean, it's super engaging. How can people find you, Matt? That'd be another thing. Like if my audience wants to find you, where do they find you?
Yeah, so that would be, and thank you for the compliment. That's not because of me, the social media. That's because of my business partner, Sarah, that looks the way it does.
She's good, huh?
She is great. Yeah, extraordinary. So you can find us at ampedsuccess.com or on Instagram, TikTok. We're on again, thanks to Sarah, we're on all the venues, Amped Success.
Awesome. And I'm Dr. Mark Costas for your audience. If anybody wants to follow, I post every single day, just like the podcast. We're very, very diligent and disciplined about that.
Well, that's great. It's again a true honor to be on your show, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of What's Your Deal? I hope you enjoyed this session with Dr. Mark Costas as he shared all of these valuable insights, and I hope they contribute to your future success and a quality of life that you desire. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.